Well, welcome to the Sunday afternoon Sangha call. I'm really kind of surprised and maybe even a bit pleased at how many people are showing up recently. What, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 or so on this call. So let's start with um, uh, David's question. And David asked the question of why is it that the bhikkhus in Thailand do not do the why, to especially to lay people. They will do it to each other occasionally, and they do a whole lot of it in front of statues here and there, but they don't do it to lay people. And the question is why? And the answer is that maybe you can consider it wholesome, but the Thai Sangha in general is on a huge, huge ego trip. All right, the Thai Sangha, in fact, this was something that Bhikkhu Achan Po really, really placed into me, that now that I am a bhikkhu, I am head and shoulders above all kinds of people, including doctors and lawyers and teachers and college professors and CEOs and aristocracy. That in fact in Thailand the point is that there is only one, and maybe now since King Bhumibol has died, maybe nobody is more important than or higher in status than a monk. And that the whole point is like an army salute, is that the underlings have to salute the top dog first. Except that in Thailand, the top dog doesn't salute back. That's it. Very, very short answer is that, and not only that, but I found it an extremely valuable point about mindfulness, because in India I had gotten used to do it. I actually like the why, or the namaste, or the putting the hands together, the praying hands, or whatever like that. And I had to train myself to stop doing it.
I've I've actually caught some monks doing it to me, but I'm not sure if they did it by accident.
Yeah, it's by accident. We're not. It's an. Let us say it's an unwritten rule, but it also has to do with the respect for the sangha. That you're in the Sangha now, you're in that group of elites, and you got to behave that way. You got to deserve being in the toppest category of humanity. As a side point, my mother, who, let's say it this way, I had a 25-year long conversation with her starting in the 1960s about religion and such. And that when I was a monk actually in North Carolina, she would come and visit the Watts, especially on special, what they would call a Buddha day or a holy day or whatnot. And that the Lao and the Cambodian and the Thai people would hold her in high regard, because she was the mother of a highly respected monk. I think, in fact, I got an extra bit of respect because I was a Westerner, as well as the fact that I was able to be a good monk and knew the Dhamma. But the point that I'm making is that my mom once remarked to me that she respected the Sangha too, in the sense that the standards and the lifestyle, etc., of a Buddhist bhikkhu is so superior to your average Baptist preacher. Average Baptist preachers, the ones who pound the pulpit and pass the plate, those guys are pretty low class. And my mom was the kind of person who was qualified to make such a judgment because she had met a lot of preachers. I mean, if there was anybody who was fully 100% Christian Baptist, she was it. You've heard the story about that our family, every time that the church door opens, that the kids had to go. Well, I was in the position where my mom had the key to the church. And so I was there to open the door with her. So that's how devoted she was. But over time, by being able to see how the bhikkhus behaved themselves, that she began to see that their standards were so much higher. And the not lying to lay people is part of that. You have to respect that you're a monk now, that you have high standards. And one of the high standards is that you don't salute low-class, ordinary people. But now that I'm no longer in the monkhood, I can why. I like it. Does anybody have any questions about that before we move on to less important topics?
I have a question.
Pardon?
So why then do the monks and the other traditions continue to why lay people?
Because that's a Thai thing.
It's just a Thai thing.
That's definitely a Thai thing. And I think that it has something to do with over the past 200 years that the royal family of Thailand has been very, very closely interrelated in with the monks. Not the way that the divine right of kings and the noble kings of Europe were involved with the church, but rather that the many of the royal family and the kings have been monks, and that we have a tradition of um, highly respecting. There's several kings that are very, very well known to have been noble. One of them was King Mongut, who reigned from the 1840s until the 1870s, and I've seen even in the United States great big portraits of King Mongut. He's Prarama 4, Prarama C, and there's a Tanan, a big road that is named after him in Bangkok. So, also, it's fairly well known that his son, Wichan, who was a monk up until about 1916, and then he disrobed in order to become the regent because King Chulalongkorn's son was not old enough to take over. And that Wichan and Chulalongkorn actually reformed Thai Buddhism, starting the Dhamma Yut. And that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's lineage is from there. So that King Wichan then appointed Bhikkhu Buddhadasa as to be the Samdet Sangharaj, or like the prime minister or the head of all of the monks. And then that monk was Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's teacher. So Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's lineage goes right into the royal family. And I think that that's why, especially at Wat Suan Mok, they had that tradition of you do not wipe normal people. That's reserved for only the king himself. So, let's move on now. Alex, Amrit, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a small comment. So in India, we are taught to do this namaste since we are kids. But actually, I understand the meaning of this namaste. Actually, I was listening to one of your talk, and you're talking about Goenka and Vimla Ramshi. And I think namaste, actually, the meaning is Never mind, start again. This is my understanding.
I find that amusing and useful, but really it's a sign of respect. It's like a junior officer saluting a senior officer, or uh, prostrating in front of the Buddha statue. But in fact, in the old days of Christianity, they called the Buddhists bowing and scraping in front of idols, as if we held the idol itself and in great revere or great respect. And in fact, the real point is that we pay that kind of respect to the Buddha Dhamma, the actual teachings that is liberating. And so paying respect to that, and you could say then that one of the best parts of the primary teaching of the Buddha could be in that phrase of, never mind, start again. Stop fussing at yourself. Stop holding yourself to standards and just start again. That's almost the same thing as dukkha, dukkha, nirodha. I would go so far as to say, never mind, start again is the summation of the entire teaching of the Buddha. Another one would be what the Buddha called it was dukkha, dukkha, nirodha. Ananda referred to it as the path, and that I like the one, don't worry, be happy. But that's one of the things that you guys, each one, can contemplate. Can you get the entire teachings of the Buddha down to a one-liner? Because it's that simple. The entire teaching of the Buddha is just so simple. That's what makes it so profound, is because it's so simple. So, moving right along, Alex was asking about why Bhikkhu Buddhadasa would talk about Vedana in the sense of getting rid of it, or bringing it to a close. Why? Because all of dukkha is associated with Vedana, feelings. But in fact, if you look at the second noble truth, and to look at the second noble truth, we have to look at the first one. The first noble truth is that dukkha exists, dissatisfaction exists. And then the second noble truth is that the cause of dukkha is ignorantly liking and not liking. Now, at one time, I thought that, well, liking is better than not liking. I mean, if you like something, you're in the state of pleasure. But the reality is that if you like something, then you want it, which means that now you're in a state of not liking, doing without it. And that's kind of ignorant. So we can see then that having feelings about stuff is actually the issue. And if we can bring our feelings under control, then we can actually come to a state of satisfaction, because feelings is what is dissatisfying. Now, let's also look at Paticca. I don't want to make this an entire teaching or a lesson on Paticca, so let's go through it very, very quickly. Ajiva, Sankara, Sanya, Namarupa, Salayatana, Pasa, Vedana, Tanha, Upadana, Bhava, Dukkha. Okay? This is the set of Paticca that in fact you could say then that the teaching of Paticca is in fact an explanation, a detailed explanation of the second noble truth. that we have ignorance and we have feelings that wind up in dissatisfaction. So, right in the very beginning of Paticca Samuppada, right in the very middle of Paticca Samuppada, and right at the end of Paticca Samuppada, and the 12 steps that are there, those 12 steps are all associated with the second noble truth. Now, one of the things that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa said, in fact, he's quite famous for, is he talks about wisdom at the point of contact. That's pasa. Why? Because look at what impacts you. Look what touches you. Because what touches you is what you feel about. Now, what is it that touches you? If you can be aware of what touches you, or being aware, in fact, that you're touched, then you have an ability to manage how you feel about what touches you. Now, really, what is it that touches you is referred to as salayatana. Now, the salayatana is actually Pali words that mean an internal sense organ. In other words, there's a mirror. An example of that is that when you have a visual image, the only kind of visual image that you can have is the kind of visual image that you've seen before with your eyes. The only kind of sound that you can hear is the kind of sound that you have heard with your ears, and you can hear that sound on the inside. Okay, it's a reproducing system, except that when we take input from the outside, when we have consciousness that comes from eyes, ears, touch, taste, smell, all of those senses do not impact us. It has to go through a process first, and that process in English would be perception. In other words, the raw data itself has to be processed. The Pali would be Namarupa. There's also a Pali word, Vinya, that has to do with this changing something from the rupa, the reality, the actual thing that we see, into naming it. That you probably heard someplace that naming something is to own it. If you do not know the name of it, if you have no name of something, then we feel confused and at a loss. But once we know what something is, knowing what it is actually putting a name to it. And so the process of perception is the process of identification, or putting a name on our sensory input. And then what we come up with is the salayatana. All right, that's the name that we put on something, our understanding of it. And then that understanding that we have is what touches us and gives us feelings. Now, there's many, many thousands of examples that we could talk about to show where that happens. One example would be that somebody's walking down the street dressed in a certain way, and 3 people see that guy dressed in that certain way, and each one of them will have 3 different reactions to it, right? Let's say that somebody's dressed in an SS uniform, and one guy sees that SS uniform and he takes off and runs away. Probably he's German. Somebody else sees that SS uniform, and him being a neo-Nazi, he's going to do a Heil Hitler. And the third guy is going to take a look at that uniform and recognize that it's a Halloween suit, and he's going to bust out laughing, right? But in all 3 cases, they saw the same thing, but each one of them had a different reaction to it. Does anybody know why? Michael, can you give me a reason why 3 different people will have different reactions to the same sensory input?
Because they all have different preconceptions of what that is.
All right. All right. What is a preconception but nothing but a memory then?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so this is what impacts us is not the actual sight that we see, but what we make of it. And there's a very short, quick answer, Alexander, that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa is talking about, is that if you don't make anything out of it, you don't have any feelings about it. That's all there is to it. But if you make something out of it, then you're going to have feelings about it. You could say, in fact, there's a fourth one, maybe a child who sees that dude in an SS uniform and he becomes curious because he's never seen the SS uniform before. He doesn't know what it is. Or maybe a little girl sees that SS uniform and she becomes afraid, not because she knows what it is, but she becomes afraid because she doesn't know what it is. And all of this has to do with our perception, and the perception is based upon prior knowledge. Yeah, Carl, go ahead.
So with these preconceptions, I noticed that a lot of times they're still gonna be there. They never go anywhere. We just learn how to see that it's rising up within us. But with some, like for example, you'll still see that uniform that is familiar with for you. For example, maybe a policeman you have a good memory of, and then you're gonna make nothing out of it. But then you're gonna see a uniform of a soldier, and then you're gonna make something out of it. But you can calm it down within you to see that's a preconception. But it never goes back to that original state of, oh, soldier, good. It can never be a policeman. You know what I mean? It's like
Mm-hmm.
it never, you can never go back to that original childhood memory and change it completely forever. It seems like you're still gonna be perceiving slight danger, but you're gonna be able to calm that danger down as seeing that there's nothing to it.
Right, okay, but that fear of the danger is based upon prior knowledge. And this is an important thing because fear is at the base of all negative feelings. Even in fact, you like something and then you want it, that means that you're going to be afraid to do without it. So fear is the feeling.
But it
Fear
doesn't
is
seem
that.
like
Go
that
ahead.
fear goes anywhere. It's still like it stays, but you're just able to deal with it like at much better capacity than previously with the practice. But the fear is still there. Meanwhile, with other like
Why is the fear
objects,
still there?
it's still it just arises. It still arises because you're still probably seeing that uniform. It glimpses back into your memory almost automatically. Meanwhile, with other objects, it's not doing that.
All right. There is a concept that I have heard. In fact, it's part of what I've heard from Goenka, is to burn up all of the old sankharas. Another way of thinking about it is karma, that if you do a good action, you'll get a good result. And if you have a bad action, you're going to get a bad result. And that in the time of the Buddha, the students of Nata Nataputta, who was known as Mahavira, that's now become the Jain faction in India, they believed that their behavior was already perfect. Why is it perfect? It's because they didn't kill anything. They would wear masks to prevent even little insects from coming into their body through the breath. They would sweep their path. They would do any and everything to make sure that they did not cause harm in any way, and yet they still had dukkha. They still had dissatisfaction. They still had suffering. And so then, through Mahavira, they devised a method of burning off all of the old sankharas, which meant that they would flagellate themselves in order to give themselves pain, so that they would go ahead and burn up all of the old bad karma. And the reality is that the new action of self-flagellation was a new action that was giving a new negative result. And that the old karma, the old sankharas, were still there. But in fact, when they would self-flagellate themselves, they were far worse off. Just like so many practitioners in the West, when they practice meditation, they wind up worse off than they were before. They're not actually burning up any sankharas at all. A much better way of thinking about the sankharas, instead of burning them up or paying them off, is to build up better things. One of the examples that I've used before is, imagine that all of your past is just a bunch of crap. It's actually a bunch of crap that's already been flushed down this toilet, but it's still in your mental sewer system. And that anything that you do that comes into now will become part of your past, which means it gets flushed down the toilet of time and goes into your sewer. And so if you put a full, nice French fries and hamburger from McDonald's down the sewer of time, that hamburger is going to become part of the sewage, right? Especially since you're having all kinds of dumps and whatever and adding more sewage to it. But the way to handle it, this is why we're practicing anapanasati, which means we're practicing having good, wholesome thoughts, and having a lot of them is like then layering that sewer system with hamburgers, hundreds and thousands of hamburgers. And if you lay enough hamburgers on top of the sewer, you're unlikely to get down to the sewage anymore. That we're wanting to pile on good, wholesome thoughts. If you have good, wholesome thoughts piling on and piling on and piling on, then when it's time for you to have perception, then you will gain, you'll dig into your sewer system, and all you find is happy, delicious hamburgers to process your experience with. And so you'll wind up coming up with something useful, valuable, and wholesome, because that's what your memory system has. But right now, almost everyone has a sewer system that is wretched. It stinks. You're a whole pile of crap. And what we need to do is to start adding good memories, wholesome memories, one at a time, over and over and over again. In other words, you're going to now flood your sewer system with fresh, clean water. And if you dilute it more and more and more, you wind up having a sewer system full of fresh, clean water. But you have to practice doing that. You have to put that garden hose on and flush it down the toilet, and keep doing that and keep doing that. You keep putting in good, fresh water, and it will dilute all of the poisons that we have built up from the past. So this is the way that we begin to do it, so that when you have a memory of something, you wind up having a memory that you process with your perception to come out very good. Does anybody have any questions about this? Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so what I understand is what you're talking about is based on the 5 aggregates, right? So
No, not necessarily. The 5 aggregates they're part of it. The
Yes, they're
primary
part of it.
teaching of the five aggregates is to understand that there is no self. There is no
Yeah.
self in the body. There is no self in these sankharas. They're just memories. There is no self in your sensory input, your consciousness. There is no self in the way that you're perceiving things, in your perception, and there is no self in the outcome, the feelings that you have. In all of those places, there is no real you.
Mm.
That the
And
you that you have is actually a delusion, and you could say that the delusion of the self is based upon then the Vedana that is created through the perception and through the sankharas and through the consciousness.
so the thing is, if you keep conditioning yourself with wholesome thing, it's still like good feelings, you know. So there's still this maybe adding more delusion about yourself by feeling good, you know. So there's kind of this small contradiction, no?
Michael, can you explain to me what he's talking about with the? I don't hear the contradiction. Do you hear his contradiction?
The thing that I would bring up is when the Buddha talks about pleasures of first jhana and sitting under the rose apple tree. That doesn't keep you from seeing that, oh, there's no permanent self here, there's no permanent soul here, just because you're having wholesome feelings. The Buddha didn't speak against having wholesome feelings.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So you did mention the five aggregates, and that I do want to point out that all of those five aggregates are part of Paticca Samuppada. The body, in fact, is referenced in as part of the. Turn your mic off, Michael. The body is actually referred to in the suttas as part of the sankhara, bodily sankhara. And the condition that your body is in is based upon all the stuff that's happened to it in the past, all the things that you've done to it, by it, and for it. So, when we're talking about having wisdom at the point of contact, that will allow the beginner, or maybe the intermediate, to be able to start to manage his feelings so that you can begin to feel the way that you want to feel by practicing feeling the way that you want to feel. This is why when I'm talking about gladdening the mind and starting to develop sukha, we will begin to have thoughts about, I'm safe. I've got no deadlines. I'm not afraid. And we begin to pound that in over and over again, that very wholesome position of there is nothing to be afraid of. Why? Because we have been dealing with mental daddies with sticks for our whole lives. We, in our culture, most people spend most of the time afraid, and all of their behaviors is based upon fear. The guy who wants a Lamborghini is afraid that he's not going to get a chick without it. And that's his delusion. In fact, people who have huge amounts of money, they think that they can use that money to feel better, and they wind up not feeling better. Once he's bought that Lamborghini, then somebody is sitting beside it taking photos, and he doesn't like somebody sitting on his Lamborghini. He doesn't like all kinds of things. In fact, people who have a lot of money wind up having a lot of dukkha, a lot of dissatisfaction, because they're under the delusion that the money should prevent them from being dissatisfied. And so they wind up being even more dissatisfied. That in fact, not having any money is the easiest way to become satisfied. So, this is one of the points. Okay, go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, to go back on that, if we go back to the using of example of sewer system, I still kind of see there's a whole state of you being wholesome, but then there's a certain conditionings or beliefs that still arise, that fear within you that drag you out of that, like your good sewer system. You can pile up as many thoughts as you want,
Okay,
but
and this
there
is
might
where sati comes into play. Can you remember to look at that when it comes up? Can you remember to see that fear when it comes up so you can tell yourself once again, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of? That you don't put that hamburger in as sewage, you put it in as fresh meat.
So it almost goes like there's a sewage system, but there's also the different pipes that it's coming in from, and you have to clear those pipes as well. You have to, each time it comes through a different pipe, you have to clean out that pipe, and then sometimes it comes in from a different pipe. You have to.
Now, cleaning out the pipe actually now is the primary delusion that Westerners have of it taking a long time. That there is a path from here to yonder, and you've got to tread that path. To where what we're talking about here is what happens right here, right now. What are you going to put in your sewer right here, right now? And if you have a whole lot of right now as to where you're putting fresh stuff in the sewer, it's going to get cleaned out because all you're ever putting into it is fresh, clean water and not putting in any garbage anymore. Okay, so as soon as you have a thought of garbage that brings up the fear, you can say, I caught that. Let's change that right now before it gets into the past. So this is where we're practicing. We're practicing over and over and over again that we've got a choice about how we're going to feel. Are we going to feel afraid? Are we going to feel bad? Are we going to feel sad, frustrated, angry, petrified, persecuted? We're going to feel grief, anguish, despair. All of these feelings are based upon fear. So if in this particular moment you can bring yourself out of fear, where there's nothing to be afraid of, then the kind of feeling that you're putting into your memory system is a feeling of everything's okay, everything is fine. Wow, I can be joyful, I can be happy. So it depends upon what you make of this moment is what becomes part of your past. And if you have a whole lot of this is a really good moment kind of moments, and you put that on top of all of the other sewage, you wind up having nothing but good, happy thoughts that you draw from your past. This is why it takes practice over and over and over and over again, because you put a lot of garbage, a lot of crap in your sewer system, and it's putrid and it stinks.
But
And
it
so
seems
now
like
we have to start putting in some good, wholesome stuff in it.
it seems like there is a lot of wholesome right now. Like if I take myself as an example, there is a lot of wholesome throughout the day with like pretty much everything, but there's still one or two things that I assume that's why I call them pipes that still drag you kind of back to the sewage, and it doesn't seem like it's related to my wholesomeness throughout the day. It seems like
First
it's a
off,
separate thing.
Congratulations if you've only got a couple of things left. That means that now you can start to devote all of your time and effort towards getting rid of those two things. This one and then that one and then this one again and then that one over and over and over again, and get that stuff out and start putting some very wholesome, healthy thoughts in there. That is, you can think of it as kind of a balance also, in the sense that if you keep putting a whole lot of happy thoughts in the balance, then they're going to begin to outweigh all of your crap. And the kind of thing that you're kind of mentioning is throw out the scales. Well, you can't throw out your sewer system. There is no one like here in Thailand when they have to call a company to come clean out their septic tank. Well, where do they take that septic tank to? You know, they're going to take the contents out of it, put it in a truck, and go put it out at sea or something like that. But unfortunately, you don't have that kind of truck that can go take your garbage out. It's going to stay there as part of your memory system. The only thing that you can do is start putting some wholesome stuff in to outweigh it, to cover it over the top of it. But you can't clean those pipes. All you can do is just add good, wholesome stuff to it over and over and over again. This is what we are practicing with Anapanasati. And we do it when we remember to. Right here, right now, I'm not afraid. And then the fear comes back and we say, wow, I'm glad I caught that fear. Aha, I see you, fear. And I'm very happy that I can see the fear, because when I can see the fear, I'm not afraid. I recognize that that fear is irrational. It's based upon the fact that I was afraid when I was a child. But now I'm not afraid. And so we keep building that up. We get new habits. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the truth is lighter than the lie, and it makes us feel lighter.
It floats to the top, doesn't it? Right.
Yeah,
The truth is
floats to the
very
top.
lightweight, and so it floats right to the top. And for that reason, you're much more likely, if you've got a whole lot of wholesome, happy thoughts that are built up and are covering over all the heavy sewage from the past, then when you have perceptions, you're most likely to have perceptions of things being good, and that makes your storyline, your salayatana, good. That's what contacts you, and you wind up being able to control your feelings. And so this is the way that we process it. And I think that part of the problem that we're having, Carl, is the example that I'm using. Analogies only go so far, because you think that you can go clean the pipes out there. And how do people try to clean the pipes out? They go do drugs. Maybe they'll have some surgery. Maybe they'll even have a lobotomy. But that does not make one feel better. It actually creates a situation so that they wind up feeling worse.
The way I see those pipes is that there's a lot of like self, like anytime those pipes would arise, there's still a lot of self there, and that's what kind of drags you back into that story. There's still some personal
Yeah, you're not the
story.
pipes.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not the pipes. You're not that process. Okay.
I'm the
Now,
sewage.
okay. Thomas, go ahead. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I like this sewage pipes analogy. I just had one question, which maybe connects to what Alexandra was asking. I'm not sure. My understanding is that there were like 4 stages, unless I misremember, of karma, and that final one was the ending of karma. So is what you're talking about not one of the previous stages, and what does the ending of karma look like?
Exactly. All right. We're actually at that 3rd stage in the sense of having mixed. We're mixing that stuff together so that we have, in the realm of karma, they have good results. Good action gives good results. Bad action gives bad results. But the reality is that almost everything you do is mixed. For instance, the doctor can operate on the patient, but he wants to get paid. He's putting selfishness in it. He's putting his ego in it. So any good thing that you do, you're going to have negative results with it. Everything is mixed until you begin to recognize, oh, I can actually begin to control that so that I'm putting good, wholesome things in it over and over and over again, especially in the sense of when we're alone, when we're in seclusion, when we're all by ourselves. That's when we begin to look at the kind of thoughts that you have. Is this thought worth having? Is this thought a pile of crap? Am I making shit up? Because it's all going to go into the toilet as stinky. Or am I having good, wholesome thoughts right now? Thoughts of everything is okay, thoughts of no worries, thoughts of I can handle this, thoughts of everything is all right. Okay? And so we keep doing that over and over again, and we begin then with this method to be able to control the way we feel by taking it from the negative liking and disliking into everything is okay, everything is fine. All right, Ivan, you got your hand up.
Yes. You just now you just mentioned something about only in seclusion that we can really see what kind of thoughts we are having. I just want to. I have no idea. It's just something about that line that you said really just. Is that what the Buddha said too? I guess it's just something because it sparked some curiosity inside of me for some reason.
I'm not sure what you're saying. Michael, can you help me out with that?
So yeah, Ivan's asking about seclusion. With regards to seclusion, it is easier to see what's going on in your mind, but you can still see it when you go out into the real world. But the whole point of having seclusion and practicing in seclusion is to develop that, is to get into that habit of practicing it over and over again. It is easier for it to go away when you're not in seclusion, but that's when we could just remember and start again.
Mm-hmm. So there's many different analogies that we can use, but the best way to get your mind in a really good state is when you're fully and completely away from other people who are not in a good state. And then the opposite of that would be that it's also a very good thing for you to sometimes associate with people who are in a really good state, that they can cheer you up. They can take the Mickey out of you and let you see things the way that they really are. Turn your microphone off. Okay. So.
Sorry, Dhammarato, could I just quickly ask a question related to what you were sharing earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Just to understand, like the end, sort of the end game or nirvana or whatever.
We're not at the end game yet. I'm trying to set it up so that we can go to the end game.
Oh, okay.
We're nowhere near the end game. This is all in the middle. This is actually at the beginning still.
Okay.
All right. We remember that we were talking about the 4 kinds of karma, and we've got to the third one, but I have not addressed that 4th one yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So we are nowhere near the end of all of this. Roth, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Dhammarato. Look, I'm not somebody who's ever really read the Pali scriptures, but you said something about, being around people who make you laugh or you can take the mickey out of. Is there any evidence? Is there anything in the Pali scriptures where the Buddha would, take the mickey out of someone or have a bit of a laugh? Because
he was hard on his students. There's many times. I mean, we've talked about there are a couple of sutras where the guys wind up with drooped shoulders, pouting, almost in tears, while he's talking about to ask the other monks around, does this monk have even a shred of wisdom? All right, he was pretty hard on them. All right, he took the mickey right out of them sometimes. All right. And a good psychotherapist will confront one also. Western people are really big on books for some reason. You got to be, if you want to be famous, you got to write a book and have a whole lot of people buy the book, and maybe a few of them will read it and get something out of it. But the problem with books is that they're not going to confront you. The book is not going to say, "Hey, you're on page 96 and you need to go back to page 1." You have not done. Okay. Another example of that is I took a course one time in calculus while I was at university. I bought the book, and all gung-ho and everything, I started reading the book and reading the book and reading the book. By the time I got to chapter 3, I was completely lost. Why? Because I wasn't doing the examples at the end of the chapters so that I could get real understanding of the calculus. And when those self-help books are finished, you put them on the shelf, and then we forget all about them. But a good therapist, a good Buddha, he's going to take the mickey right out of you. He's going to tell you. When he sees crap, he's going to point it out and say, "Hey, let's get rid of that crap." So, from that perspective, let's move on a bit and go back to Paticca and talk about it, that this beginning point is wisdom at the point of contact. Begin to recognize how your past influences your present moment, so that what contacts you is partially what's happening right now and partially from the past, because we're processing it over and over and over again using old data. So what we're going to practice for a long while is putting good, wholesome thoughts in to the mix, so that we begin to outweigh all of the negative thoughts. We have thoughts of being fearful. Let's outweigh those thoughts with having thoughts of everything's okay, there's nothing to be afraid of, I can handle this. And we begin to gain confidence, shraddha. That confidence then winds up being spoken as it doesn't matter how the mind can get full of crap. We can throw that stuff out and come back and see reality the way that it is. That's a pretty advanced position, to be able to see that what we're thinking is crap, that we're thinking fearful thoughts, we're thinking ugly thoughts, we're thinking thoughts of revenge, we're thoughts of deadlines, that we've got to get something done in a hurry. All of those kind of thoughts. And when we can see those kind of thoughts, we can say, aha, I see that. And now I can come back to the reality of is that deadline is something that I made up. And I feel bad because I made up a deadline. So let's take the deadlines out of life and just start enjoying your life. Let's not work so hard, because all of your hard work is actually crap. The reason that we work hard is because of our desires. When you stop having desires so much and start to feel really good, you wind up not being driven to behaviors and actions. All right? So now let's go to the real point where Alexander was asking from Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's point, how then do we come to the state of having no feelings? Well, the first thing that we have to do, as I've been describing, is that we have to learn to control the feelings. Just like a great big ship has no brakes. The only thing that we can do is slow it down a little bit by turning the propellers backwards, but most of it has to do with steering. So we're going to start doing steering into good waters, rather than keep heading for the shore and heading for the docks, where we're doing a lot of damage, breaking things up and whatnot. So as we progress in the Dhamma, we begin to see that we're making stuff up. First, we're making stuff up, but we're making up good, wholesome stuff. But let's make some good, wholesome stuff up so that we can wind up impacting ourselves, so that we can begin to control our feelings. But eventually, when practice is really getting going, we go from that third noble truth, or that third kind of karma, rather, which is the mixed karma. And here we're controlling the mix by putting more and more wholesome in and having less and less unwholesome. The fourth kind of karma is known as neither good nor bad, neither bright nor dark karma that gives neither bright nor dark results. This is what that means. Let's give an ordinary example is that if you do not harm anyone because you are already okay, if your mind is clear, if it's bright, if it's clean, if the mind is noble, that if you don't want anything, then you're unlikely to hurt somebody to get it. You're unlikely to tell lies. And so we wind up having no dark karma, but also wanting stuff like wanting enlightenment, wanting nibbana, wanting this, that, and the other thing. We bring that to a close also and just live in this present moment. This moment is good enough. Now, as we do this, what that means is in the present moment, this present moment is more about sensory input than it is about our memories and our past that we use for perception. So the more we spend time in this present moment, the more time we spend in gathering data rather than processing data, then that means that we're bringing the perception down, 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 and eventually bring it to a close so that we're all sensory input and no processing. When we can come to that state, that means that now there is no results. There is no salayatana to impact us, which means now that there is no feelings left, because now we're controlling the feelings by not manufacturing the things that contact us, and we're just gathering data. This is what we mean by pure consciousness. Pure consciousness means that we're not polluting it with the perceptions of the past, that we're just leaving things as they are. And this is where we've come to the point that there's basically no feelings left. Or any feelings that you have are the kind of feelings that you want. And this is an important question. If you could feel the way that you wanted to feel, how would you feel? Ross, if you could feel the way you wanted to feel, how would you feel right now? Never mind later, because later you don't know how you want to feel. But right now, how do you want to feel?
Chilled and relaxed.
How about the other Ross? How would you feel if you could feel the way you wanted to feel?
I suppose just have a happy feeling, really.
All right. Could you actually consider that the very, very best feeling that you could have would be, not much, no feeling at all. Everything is just okay. Everything is just all right. No problems. Everything is adequate. That's the kind of feeling to where there's no elation. There's no ups and downs. You're just kind of okay.
Being permanent like that would be very difficult to conceive, but yeah.
Well, that's because we need practice. You have to practice beginning to control the feelings so that you can practice feeling good. You can practice liking without wanting. You can practice being pleased. You can practice being okay, comfortable, safe, secure, satisfied, then eventually successful. But what happens when you get a whole lot of success? That was when you come to the state of being wealthy, where things don't matter so much anymore. This is that state that we're talking about, Alex, that in fact it's in a sutra number 111, one by one as they occur, where Sariputta began to see that the end of perceiving, the end of making stuff up, is also the end of feelings. so that we can bring the feeling system, at least for a little while in the moment, we can bring it to a close where there's nothing left of it. But that means that we're doing almost all sensory input. We're gathering data and gathering more data. We're in paradise, enjoying paradise rather than judging paradise. That perception is actually a kind of a judgment system. It's also wanting to know, wanting to understand. This is why we process data, is because we don't like data raw. We want to cook the books. We want to have it our way. This is why we have so much feelings. And so we can first begin to control the feelings by adding really good stuff to the mix. Once we get that going so that we can begin to feel the way that we want to feel, ultimately, then we can come to the point of feeling the way we want to feel by not feeling much at all. Everything's okay. I don't have to get it done. I don't have to like doing it. I could just do it. Pay attention to what you're doing. Pay full attention to what you're doing without having much feelings. So this is what we mean then by the end of perception, means the end of making stuff up. First, we learn to make stuff up by having good things to make up, but eventually we stop making stuff up. We just live in reality. But to live in reality means you have to be conscious of reality without having to perceive reality into some result. I don't see any hands right now. There in the middle of it, there were a lot of hands up, but now we're beginning to go to the end of it all where there's no feelings left. This is, in fact, the state, Carl, where we would have the pipes kind of cleaned out, is because after we clean out the sewer system, we stop putting stuff in it.
I see it very clearly in a way that if we were to take sensations as like sticky notes that we put on the wall, but we don't write anything on top of them. We just put a sticky note, put a sticky note, put a sticky note. And then we just have this beautiful wall of like colorful sticky notes that we can look at and be like, oh, it's empty. It's quite enjoyable. It looks nice.
All right. Ross, you had your hand up for a moment.
Yeah, I was just trying to sort of visualize what Buddha and Sariputra were doing back 2,500 years ago. But were they just chilling out, sitting down and doing not much?
Yeah, no
relaxing?
place to go, nothing to do. In fact, there's a number of sutras. One of them has to do with a king who comes to visit the Buddha. He comes a little bit past sundown, and there the Buddha is sitting with his company of monks, and everybody's just sitting. Nobody's doing much of anything. They're just hanging out. They're not meditating because they're not trying to get something. Remember that meditation is something that you do in order to get some result. Once you've gotten the result, you could just sit. You don't have to call it meditation. So they were just sitting, just hanging out. A good dose of laziness to just come to doing nothing. I think some of you heard the talk when we were talking about the hard and the soft method. I know that Michael was here for that one. That we all start off in our society, because of the way that we're raised, we all start thinking that we've got to work hard, we've got to do it, we've got to meditate, we've got to work hard at getting something. And so we bring that whole mentality to the Dhamma. And people wind up being translators, and they learn the Pali language, and they sit for long hours, and they feel bad, and all of this kind of stuff. And so a way of saying it is that they're all on a journey to nowhere. And when they own that journey, so much walking and walking and going and pilgrimaging and all of that kind of stuff on that journey to nowhere, when they recognize they're getting nowhere, maybe they'll stop the journey. When you get to the end of your journey, which means that you recognize that your journey is getting you nowhere. And when you come to the end of nothing and nowhere, just relax. Another way of talking about it is the pilgrims. Back in the Middle Ages, they would go from Europe all the way to the Holy Land, and they would go from one holy site to another to another. They never just sat down at the holy site and just rested. They remained pilgrims. So what I recommend for each one of you is to stop perceiving a pilgrimage. You've already arrived. You're already enlightened. You're already okay. There's nothing to do and no place to go, but you have to keep practicing that in order to be able to get it, because that's the reality is there's no place to go and nothing to do. And yet we have been trained in our society that there's a whole lot of places to go and a whole lot of stuff to do. And you better go do it or you'll miss out. And guess what? Those people who are on that journey, they're the ones who are missing out. What are they missing out of? Peace, comfort, relaxation, uh, safety, security, comfort, satisfaction. That's what they're missing out on. And so the last point to make then is the issue of nibbana, because Amrit mentioned nibbana. Once you stop working, everything cools off by itself. Just like an automobile that's been out on the road, it's hot. It's got a radiator. The tires are hot. The brakes are hot. The exhaust is hot. But when you get home, you turn the car off. There it is, sitting with no place to go and nothing to do. What happens to that car eventually? It cools off. Can you actually stop doing long enough to chill? That's what is nibbana, is the cooling off we do after we stop running, journeying, pilgrimaging, meditating, working. You just stop. You take the easy way out. You stop working. You stop doing it the hard way and do it the easy way. And what is the easiest of easy ways? Nothing to it. Nothing at all. You know, the Buddha was actually big on sunyata. He was big on nothing. Well, that's what his monks were doing. They were just sitting there doing nothing. That's the end, is when you're so happy that you're doing nothing at all. You're so happy that you don't even express happiness. You're just contented with the way things are. You're chill. So that's the path. The path is to stop being on a path. Because your journey is a journey to nowhere. And you recognize that your journey is a journey to nowhere and stop your journey. Because wherever you are, there you are right now, and that's good enough. So, Alex, you were asking that question about what is the end of Vedana. The end of Vedana is when you stop trying to feel some way or another, but you got to really learn to control your feelings first in order to control them into nothing. It's sort of like that great big ship will come to rest only when it slows down and almost stops just as it's coming into port. And then it stops. And that's what the Buddha teaches. He teaches to stop. He said to Angulimala, Angulimala says, "Stop, monk, stop." And the Buddha says, "I have stopped. You stop too. And when you stop, turn off your motor, you'll chill." Amrit, can you chill?
Yes, of course.
All right. So, does anybody have any questions about this as we finish up? Nobody's got any questions. Everybody's so chill. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. This has been a nice chat. May you chill. May you turn off your motors, stop traveling, stop trying to get stuff, and just chill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dhammarato.
Thanks, everyone. Good Sunday.